welcome to Your Next Step. I'm Jennifer Jackson, and I am very encouraged today because I have Beth Tabor and Chelsea Swan here with us. Say hello.
Hello.
Hi. They are part of the church at Como, and the church at Como, I just learned, is on Como Avenue right here in Columbus, Ohio. You know, you learn something new every day, but it stands for Compassion Outreach Ministries of Ohio, and they provide support and assistance for victims in human trafficking, drug abuse, and those immersed in poverty. So we are going to dive in today to this, and I just want to start with Chelsea. And if you would share with them your story, how did we even get here today from the very beginning? Where did it begin, and what all have you been through, I guess?
Okay. It all really for me began about 14 years old. I kind of started dabbling in the drug world. It started with marijuana. I know that's so cliche. Everybody says it's the gateway drug, but I actually do believe that. For me, it started with just hanging out with friends, and this was like the popular, cool thing to do, and it wasn't really frowned upon. I was always just told, like, drugs are bad, don't do them. So I'm like, well, of course people are trying to prevent me from having fun. That is exactly what's happening. There is nothing more beyond that. They just do not want me to have a good time. And it kind of evolved from there. Older kids in school were bringing pills to school, and then it was like, oh, well, it's prescription pills. Like, doctors give them to people, so they can't be that bad. And it makes me feel really good when I'm doing it. And at that point in time, I didn't really have a lot of consequences that came out of it. Everything was still kind of a party and fun. And fast forwarding a couple of years, I was probably 17. The Oxycontin, the person that primarily had Oxycontin, was incarcerated. So then that was something that where I lived at, because I was out in the country, we couldn't find anymore. And so a friend of mine, what I at the time thought was a friend of mine, had called me and he said, hey, we have this boy. And mind you, that's slang for heroin. At the time, I had absolutely no idea that was slang for heroin. He had told me that it was better than what I was doing, and I kind of just believed him on that. And so I went and spent half the money that I normally spent on pills on that, and it was way more powerful, like extremely powerful stuff. And just the feeling that came with that was like, okay, well, this is way better and it's cheaper. So I'm going to do this because this is fun. And at first it was fun for a couple of weeks, like literally a couple of weeks. And then things got serious. You didn't have it. And then my brain told me every time I didn't have it, like, you're going to die. Like, you're going to die if you don't find this. Like, you absolutely have to have this. Like, you feel the physical pain that you're in. Like, you need more of this. It doesn't matter what it is. If this was cancer and there was a magic thing to fix it, you'd go get that, whatever it cost.
Sure.
So then with that level of addiction...
so you felt like you were addicted at that point?
Yeah. I mean,
quickly.
I knew within a couple weeks. It was probably 3 weeks, I would say. Wow. I knew for sure that I was addicted. I knew that I couldn't go a day without having it. And at that point, I wasn't using syringes. I wasn't taking an IV, but I still knew pretty rapidly that I was addicted. And then, I don't know, maybe a month or two into doing that, a guy had came to me and my boyfriend at the time, and he's like, hey, listen, if you shoot this stuff up, it's even better. I'm like, I don't know. This sounds kind of scary. I don't know how I feel about this. Tried it anyways, because why would a naive teenager not? And, from that point forward, it was definitely just a really large downward spiral. It happened rapidly, and the consequences didn't really matter. At that point, I'd been incarcerated in a juvenile detention facility for a marijuana charge, and then I had made my way out of the juvenile system and was incarcerated again on another marijuana charge as an adult. And in that period of incarceration, I found out that I was pregnant with my son. And even at that point, it was like, okay, well, I can't live without something. I know that I can't be pregnant and doing heroin, but I also can't live without having something in me. So I went to a methadone clinic and was legally prescribed methadone. And I thought, this is for sure going to fix it. I'm going to be okay after this. Like, I'll get the treatment that I need from these people, and everything will be all right.
So hold on a second. Were you not in school anymore? So you were 17, or were you 18 by now?
By that point, I was 18. At about 16 and a half, I had been expelled from school for missing too much school.
Okay.
And I had convinced my mom that homeschooling was the way to go, and then had found a GED high school equivalency test that I could take. So at 16 and a half, I was technically graduated from high school. So that was also a large mistake on my part.
So, hey, everyone, I just wanted to remind you that this is your next step. I'm Jennifer Jackson, and you are listening to Chelsea Swan. She is just recently graduated in the past few years from the church at Como. It is a ministry that provides support, assistance for victims from human trafficking, drug abuse, and immersed in poverty. So we are honored today to have Chelsea with us. We're right in the midst of her story about how she got involved in the drug scene. And we're talking about when you were around 16 to 18. Mm-hmm. So keep going.
So, yeah, at that point, there was a lot of struggles going on at home. My parents were in the midst of a divorce. My dad had moved here to Ohio, and my mother and I were still in Indiana. So it was very easy for me to be the manipulative teenager that I was and convince them that the cure to the issue was to get me hurried up and graduated from school. So then I kind of just had a free reign on.
So wait a second. When you were pregnant with the baby, how long were you incarcerated then? And now are you out of school? I mean, out of jail?
So I was with, I had those charges for about 6 months.
Okay.
I was only incarcerated on the charges for 2 weeks, and the judge had released me because I was too much of a high-risk pregnancy because they knew I was detoxing from heroin.
Wow. So now you're back at home with mom. You're pregnant, and you've been out of jail 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Okay, keep going.
So then, shortly after I had been released from jail that time, my other solution is I'm kind of tired of dealing with mom nagging at me all the time, so I'm going to move out. And I was like 17. I was like just freshly 17 years old, and I had moved in with my boyfriend who was 22. I think he was 22 at the time, 21 or 22. And we had gotten an apartment in the city, which, again, wasn't helpful because that just made drugs more readily accessible. So I maintained staying on methadone while I was pregnant. I gave birth to a healthy son, which I'm very fortunate of. I was extremely fortunate that he didn't detox from the methadone. I've seen some horror stories since then of babies.
Explain methadone. Maybe there's someone that doesn't know. What is that, and how did that help you in that, 9 months, I guess?
So methadone is what they consider a medically assisted detox. Methadone is an opiate. It is, unlike Suboxone, it does not have any sort of blockers. Like Suboxone is an opiate along with naloxone, which is Narcan, which is what they use to revive people.
Okay.
So it is just strictly an opiate drug. So
they use it for people like an end-stage cancer when they can't, they can't lower their pain anymore. But it's primarily for opiate addiction.
It's an extremely strong opiate. I mean, you still definitely get the effects of having an opiate in your system while on methadone. So during that time, because I was pregnant, they did not charge me to go to the methadone clinic. They let you charge to an account. So then after I had my son, I owed them something around $2,600, and I'm now 18 years old. And I didn't have $2,600 to give them. I have a newborn baby at home. So now I'm detoxing off methadone, which, unlike heroin, the methadone detox is something around like 21 to 30 days.
And what are the consequences of that? Like, what does your body feel like?
I mean, everything from vomiting, diarrhea, body sweats, muscle aches. I mean, you just kind of feel like your body's getting ripped out from the inside out. I mean, it's just...
all with a newborn baby.
Right. And yeah, a new life that is 100% dependent on you. So it did not take me long, maybe a week, to go back to heroin. And in the process of that, CPS was involved with my son. And
what is CPS, just for...
Child Protective Services.
Oh, okay.
So because I was on methadone, they opened a case. And they wanted to just make sure that everything was in order and I wasn't still addicted to drugs. Obviously, I was doing drugs. So within a matter of about a year and a half, I would say, they had removed him from my custody. So then I no longer had my son, and I kind of went into a pretty bad downward spiral from that point. I just recently found out a couple of weeks ago that it was in March, the year after I had him, that we went to court, and I still don't remember this, even getting told this information, that they had sat me down in a room and I actually signed away all custodial rights to him. So legally, in the law's eyes, I'm not his mom.
But in your heart, you were.
Right, exactly. So I'm fortunate that I have... the woman that adopted him, his paternal grandmother, she still allows me to see him and everything like that. A lot of people aren't fortunate enough to have that. So,
I can't wait to get to that reunion part. But for now, keep going.
Okay. So then after that, I kind of just, almost put myself in a coma. So by that point, I was taking heroin and I was taking Xanax, which is a benzodiazepine. It's like an antidepressant type drug. They prescribe it for a lot of different things.
Mostly anxiety.
Yeah. So now that I know what I know, it's like a super lethal combination. They say, like, out of everything that a lot of places won't detox people unless they're like a place that has doctors and nurses and stuff on staff, because there's just like, you can have a lot of seizures and whatnot from a Xanax detox.
And why don't we let Beth jump right in here and tell me what are the effects of heroin? How much does heroin cost? What are the stats around heroin and these drugs? We have so many people. It's almost a buzzword because it seems to me so many people have a friend or a family member or someone they love who's involved in this. So for that listener, what would you say? Like, give us a little more.
Well, they haven't released Ohio's 2020 stats yet. So there's still at 2019. In 2019, there was a 10% increase in accidental overdose death, which are drug-related overdose. Most of them are opiate-related. And over 4,000 people died in Ohio in 2019. So they say, statistically speaking, like 1 in 4 people know somebody who is addicted to an opiate. It's the cheapest drug that there is out there. Well, actually, that's not true now. Meth is currently the cheapest drug on the street right now.
But heroin's still a drug of choice because of the
fentanyl.
price.
Now it's fentanyl. It was tar heroin, and that was dirt cheap. The average amount that people would come and ask for is $8. For $8, you could get a little balloon full of heroin, and that's what you would use. And then it changed to fentanyl, and it's still cheap. Fentanyl is in almost everything. Fentanyl's in marijuana. Fentanyl is in like every drug. Meth has fentanyl in it now, and the reason is because if they can addict you quickly to fentanyl, then you'll continue to use the drugs.
Yep.
So,
okay. So Chelsea, keep going.
So by this point, there's a large part of this period of time in my life that I don't really remember.
What about God from this point? Has he entered the scene at all in your consciousness or in your heart?
I would say that it was something that I thought about from time to time. And at the time, I kind of felt like, how could God do this to me? Like, why would he let all these things happen? I really kind of blamed God.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to accept any form of responsibility for myself and my own actions. I wanted it to be someone else's fault. So on the days that it wasn't, oh, my parents let this happen to me, it was God's fault. Mm-hmm. God let all this happen. And I was really angry just with myself, with him, with the people that were around me. I very much now, looking back at it, know that he was extremely present in my life. There was many times that, in all reality, I probably shouldn't have survived some of the things that I had survived. And I now don't believe that that would have been possible without God being there the whole time. But I didn't see that.
It wasn't an accident.
Right.
God sustained you.
Yeah, for sure. So this period of time in my life lasted a total of 14 and a half years. And through that period of time,
14 and a half years.
So
that's a really long time.
Yeah.
It is a miracle that you lived.
Yeah. So
I mean, I don't even think it's questioned. That's miraculous that you made it through
right.
all of that.
Yeah. I mean, in that time, I had acquired 4 decent-sized drug felonies, spent a total of almost 3 years in jail on and off for those drug felonies. I was frequently involved with not good people. Later that I found out were like wanted for attempted murder and all kinds of things. Weren't things that I knew at the time, and I probably, if someone would have told me at the time, I'd have been like, no, they're great people. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, those are my friends. That's what I would have told you in the moment. I'd have been like, those are really good guys. They look out for me all the time. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But now, looking back at it, like fronting me drugs, which is basically, for those that don't know, like letting me owe you money for drugs that I don't have the money for in the moment. Like, that's not what a friend does. Like, in the time, I thought that, like, those are my really good people. Like, they really look out for me.
Part of the many series of lies that you believe along that kind of a journey, right? Is you believe these people are your friends. You believe that you're not going to have to pay them back, or that you're, what are the other lies that you fell into during those times?
Well, so, I don't know, I was probably 21, and by that point, I'd pretty much burnt every bridge that I had. My family was kind of like, Chelsea, this enough is enough. Like, you have done this for a long time. I keep hearing the same thing. Like, oh, it's going to get better. I just need this, this, and this, and everything will be fine. So by that point, homelessness is playing into it. I was fortunate in a sense that I didn't really spend a lot of nights out on the street. I was either in a hotel or staying at someone's house or staying at the drug guy's trap house. Like, there was a lot of instances like that for many years. And the lies that I told myself was like, this is worth it, and there really isn't any other way. Like, this is kind of what it is, and there's no way to get out of this.
Is that back to what you said earlier? You thought, if I stop this, I'm going to die. Is that the main thing you were thinking?
Yeah. Because, I mean, so by that point in my addiction, I was doing anywhere from 2 to 5 grams of heroin in a day. And then I was taking 4 to 5 Xanax bars on top of that, which, I mean, is expensive. I mean, for me, what we were spending on a gram of heroin was like $100. And then the Xanax itself is $2 to $3 a piece for each pill that you take. So you're talking a habit that costs multiple hundreds of dollars a day. During this entire period of my life, after 17, I didn't work a job. So I worked at strip clubs and things like that, but that's not necessarily a job. And then, unfortunately, working those places, you justify to yourself that, okay, well, these people will pay me for doing sexual acts, or they'll pay me for hanging out with them and giving them time and being arm candy. And that in the moment,
vicious cycle.
Oh yeah. And in the moment, it's okay because they're going to give you the money that you need for the drugs that you need.
And in the moment, all you want is that drug.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to say hello, everyone. You are listening to Your Next Step. This is Jennifer Jackson, and we are so honored today to be listening to Chelsea Swan and her dear friend Beth Tabor. They are here from the church at Como, and this is a compassion outreach ministry of Ohio. It's so needed, so important what you're doing. Thank you for giving back to our community. It's incredible. And we are just in the midst. We are in the weeds of this journey right now with Chelsea. And so I want you to hear every last detail. So Chelsea, as we were talking about just a few minutes ago, keep going.
Mm-hmm. So at that point in the addiction, I was extremely depressed. I mean, there's all the things that you tell yourself and that you convince yourself that this has to maintain, but you're not happy. I was very aware for easily the last 5 years of my addiction that this was only going to result in either me going to prison for the rest of my life or I was going to kill myself, whether that was a drug overdose or an actual suicide. Like, I knew that this wasn't something that I could sustain.
And this was 14 years into it when you came to that realization, or how many years into it when you realized that there were a lot of dead-end paths that you were facing?
I'd say about 9 years in.
9 years in. Okay.
So, it never got better. I mean, you would have your good days, and good days really just consisted of like, oh, I got this huge amount of money, and I can go get a super nice hotel room, and I can rent a car, and I can spend thousands of dollars on drugs. But by the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you start your day with $2,000 or you start your day with $500. All of your money is gone by the end of the day, or 2 days, and all of your drugs are gone.
And how many days does it take your physical body to recover?
Less than 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. And now you're back with no money, no drugs, and we're looking for more.
Right. So
never satisfied.
No. I mean, you go to sleep and take a 3-hour nap, and you wake up and you already feel the physical need for more drugs. And I mean, immediately that's the first thing you think of before you even open your eyes is, okay, I have to find more. I'm going to die.
I think most people, parents and grandparents and teachers, do they really understand? Explain, you're explaining the depth of that addiction feeling. I don't know if they realize that just the hook that it has on people's lives. It's a stronghold.
Heroin does that. I mean, heroin takes away. People say, why don't they just stop? Well, they can't, because there's a chemical change in your brain. So up to a certain point, you're making a choice. And then once your brain has changed, it is no longer your choice. And so when Chelsea says she feels like she's going to die, that's what heroin does to your brain. You think that without this, you're not going to take your next breath, that the pain that you're experiencing is the pain that you're dying. And so part of recovery is you have to keep people safe while their brain is healing. And so it's really hard to say, okay, you're not going to die. Give me 72 or 82 hours and I'll prove that to you. It's 72 or 82 hours that they literally fear for their lives. So it's not a moral issue. It's not anything like that. There is a actual chemical change in their brain that says you have to have this. So every time she was incarcerated, or every time that she began to wake up every morning, it's like, today's the day I'm going to die unless I have this drug.
What a driver.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's extreme. Literally to a T, it's exactly like that. And people say, it's only going to take 3 days, like just 3 days. Don't do it for 3 days. But in those 3 days, literally every minute that goes by feels like an hour. And I mean, it's just, I don't know that I could compare it to any kind of pain. I've broken bones. I've been in car accidents. None of it is the same.
But that would be for someone that wants to help someone, that is the first step. Then we have to get them in an environment where they can make it the 3 days. And that would have to be a really safe, hope-filled, a lot of support.
And sometimes they don't. Sometimes it takes multiple times. Usually if somebody detoxes in jail and they've lived through it once, it's a little bit easier. So if you can get through it a couple times, your brain is still telling you the same thing, whether you've detoxed multiple times or not. But it's just like you can remind them, well, remember when you were in jail, you lived. Remember when this happened, you lived. And you're just really, you almost have to just sit on somebody for that period of time and say, you're going to be okay. And they don't believe you because their brain is stronger than anything that I can say to them.
And I see it too from maybe a pastoral perspective, but I see too how Satan and the enemy just tries to get in there and just say there is no hope. And that's what he always tries to trap us. And then you have a physical consequence of his trap.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we're at year 9.
Yeah. So at this point, that's when I started reaching out to my family and saying, I need some kind of treatment. Like, something has to change here. So I would go and I'd make it 2 or 3 days and I would leave. I was with my son's father the entire time, the whole time that I was in my addiction, all 14 years. And I would stay in the treatment programs long enough to where they would let me use the phone. That was my only goal behind that. They'd let you use the phone 2 or 3 days in to call family members or loved ones. And I'd call him up every time and say, hey, you got to come and get me. These people are torturing me. Like, I would tell him the most ridiculous stories.
So what would you call him? So this is like a boomerang. Here he is again here. What is there a term for a person like that? Is an enabler? Or what is the term for someone that doesn't really help you out, but you think they are?
So him and I, now that I know the things that I know, we just had a 100% codependent toxic relationship. Yeah. We signed off on every aspect of each other's BS. And, we just assisted each other. So in a sense, enabling, but we were more codependent drug addicts than anything. Now that I know what I know, I don't believe that we had any form of actual relationship or love or any of that. It was a love for drugs that kept us together. For years I went in and out of treatment centers. I tried multiple different states. And in the midst of those, I would leave. I'd go right back out to doing drugs. I would get arrested on, a lot of times, possession charges. In Indiana, it's a felony to drive without your license. So I frequently got arrested on things like that. I think 14 different times I got arrested for felony driving without a license. So I'd go into jail. I'd detox in jail. I'd be there for a month or so. And you just really, while you're sitting in jail, yes, you're in a safer environment than you were in, but you don't know anything to change your thought process. You just sit there and plot your next way of how you're going to get out and get drugs. That's really all that you do with your time. You tell war stories with the other girls.
How did this make you feel? What were you thinking when it was again and again and again? What was the thought process?
Oh, I'll have it this time. I'll be able to manage this time. Last time got out of control, but this time I'll just do a little bit and
the drugs are manageable.
Right. Or I'll change this. I won't do heroin. I'll just do benzos. So I'll only take Xanax. And
constantly negotiating with yourself how you can still live and take drugs.
Right. Yeah. It's okay. Well, I'm not doing heroin, so I'll do cocaine and Xanax, and that'll be fine. Because the cocaine will keep me up and the Xanax will keep me down, and then it'll be the perfect combination. It's exactly what I need.
Well, I just want to say a word to all the parents and family members that are on the other side of this coin and that are praying for a Chelsea in their life. I was one of those. I was one of your prayer warriors that you had no clue were out there praying. Right. And I just remember the many, many times your dad would come and say, oh, please pray. We're doing this. So this is where we're at. And we would pray. And a team of us would pray. And I think somehow in God's great mercy and his bird's eye view that I know he heard us. And I know it was desperate and I know it was horrible, but I feel like he was still like, we are going to have a victory. And so I just want to encourage those, if you're the one praying and it all seems lost, do not stop. Do not stop, because I'll just never forget the day that I felt like we turned a corner and I just was stunned. And I was like, God, why am I always shocked when you answer us? But you are so good, and he does. And so just keep praying. And so tell us, when did you come to this where you kind of turned the corner and for once for all?
So
Unless you've left something out before that point.
I don't think so. Well, a little bit.
Okay, so finish that.
I was incarcerated on a possession of paraphernalia, which I had syringes on me, which is illegal to have, like without a prescription. So I was arrested on that charge. Now, I was driving, and I had just went and picked up a large amount of drugs from someone, and I was driving them out to another location to get free drugs out of the process. So I'd been arrested, and I had a lot of drugs on me. And the officer that arrested me didn't know that I had all the drugs on me. And so I made it into the jail and had all these drugs. And then I'm sitting in this holding cell, and I'm like, well, I got to do something with all these drugs. They're going to find these drugs on me. I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. So my rationalization in my head is, okay, you have an ounce of heroin. You normally shoot up 4 or 5 grams. You can't shoot it up because you don't have a syringe. So we'll just snort it all, and you'll be fine because you normally put this in your vein. So, like, I'm not going to flush it because I don't want to get rid of my drugs. But this is like
that shows how deeply attached you were.
Exactly. Like, I'm not willing to go to prison for the rest of my life, which is something that, I mean, easily 10 or 12 years. But I also wasn't willing
to flush it,
to lose any of the drugs, and I wasn't going to give them to anyone else. So I overdosed in this holding cell. And they had came into the holding cell. There was a girl in there with me, and they had came in there after she had got the guard's attention. And they'd brought me to the hospital. I woke up a couple days later, and they had informed me that they Narcaned me multiple times to bring me back to life. I don't remember any of it. I don't remember them finding all the drugs because I had them all in my hand, I guess, when they had found me. So I had an ounce of heroin, I had a half ounce of cocaine, and I had like 50 Xanax bars on me. And
and you're overdosed.
Yeah. And in the midst of my addiction, I thought that it was 100% rational to be able to consume all of these drugs. So then I'm facing 12 years in prison.
Because you didn't consume the other ones.
Right.
And they were still on your body.
Right. So then they charged me with trafficking to inmates. Because technically I was an inmate and there was another girl in the cell. So
how old were you at this time, Chelsea?
I think I was about 24.
Wow.
So
12 years would have put you 36.
Right. Yeah, I'd still be incarcerated on those charges. So after a long period of time, I mean, it was on and off almost 2 years of time that I spent incarcerated on that charge. I'd either get bonded out or be released for GPS monitoring. I mean, there was multiple things that happened in the midst of that.
So they hadn't made the final say?
No, my jury trial was set out almost 2 years. I mean, they had me. I was on camera and everything. But I ended up resolving the case years into it, and I went right back out to drugs.
What were you thinking at this time?
I mean, at the time, so...
Knowing 12 years was hanging over your head,
right.
And yet you just told me you went right back out to drugs.
So, at the time, the longest time I spent was 6.5 months of constant incarceration on that charge. And the whole time, you're just in there longing for more.
Did you use while you were incarcerated?
Yeah, on and off. So there's a lot of girls that come in and they'll turn themselves in.
Find ways to get it to you.
Yeah, and they bring them in with them. So you just purchase them for whatever commissary items that are in there.
Sometimes people think it's a safe place because at least you're in jail, and it's not safe at all.
No, not at all. I mean, there wasn't a week that went by that I didn't use some form of drugs. Wasn't always the drugs that you wanted, but it was mind-altering drugs.
Anything you could find.
Right. And you pretty much do whatever. You'll pay whatever. Doesn't really matter. because your thought process hasn't changed.
Was God in the midst of the jail in any way? Did you have any flags or anything? Anyone try to share Christ with you or anything in that 6.5?
They once or twice a month would allow us to go to a church service, and unfortunately, the girls in there would use church service to get pencils so that they could do tattoos. I mean, you didn't go to church to praise God. You didn't go to church to learn about God. I mean, you went to church with some form of ulterior motive.
So ultimately, they dropped this charge, the 12 years. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then what happened?
And then I went back to my son's father, my boyfriend at the time, and we continued to use. By this point, I didn't have a vehicle anymore. We did not have a home. Paying for hotels was becoming increasingly difficult. So we eventually ended up renting this trailer, and we weren't allowed to be at this place because I was a convicted felon, so I was not allowed to be there. They didn't allow felons to rent from them or anything. We had it rented in someone else's name, and at the end there, they had said, okay, well, they came and knocked on the door, and we wouldn't let them come in, the people that owned the whole association place. So they said, okay, well, we'll be back with the police. Well, I don't have a car. I don't have any money. I'm detoxing from heroin and Xanax. It's wintertime, so it's cold outside. So going outside isn't really an option because you feel like you're dying inside. Going outside in the 20-some degrees is, like, not happening. So in that moment, I now know God was so present, and I had no idea. I mean, in that moment, I knew that I needed to call my dad. I knew that I needed help. I mean, the options in my head, and I remember it really clearly, was you're either going to try another way and actually going to try it this time, or you're going to kill yourself. It's one or the other.
We were down to 2.
Yeah.
And at this point, then maybe drugs weren't the third option.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were
so
for sure
at
down
some
to
point,
2.
that option had to be eliminated, and I'm either going to get help or I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I called my dad and I said, Dad, like, I need your help. I know you're kind of done with this whole thing, but I need your help. I'm willing to do it this time, whatever it takes. Mind you, this is the, 17th trillionth time I've told him this.
Oh, I remember.
Right. So, he dropped everything.
He always did. His
he
love
dropped
for you.
everything. I mean, he was at my house in I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours. I don't know how, because it takes 3 hours to get there, but he was there in no time. So
he is a race car
driver
guy.
So we came to Ohio, and he had no idea what to do with me. I mean, he was calling all kinds of people, like, I got to take her somewhere. By that point, he knew not to leave me at his house by myself, because that was a bad
we had that
idea.
discussion too.
Yeah. He took my phone, which was a good idea.
Very good.
And there was plenty of times where I was detoxing where I was like, yep, it's time to bolt. And I don't know, there was something inside me that just said, like, you do this to your dad again, you might not have him.
I just love how Dennis never gave up. Your dad I was like, wow, he just never gives up. And
I have no
part
idea
of it was
how.
his faith.
Yeah. It had to have been, because I don't know how. I unfortunately put him through an awful lot. And so in the process of this, my dad listened to 104.9 The River every single morning. And at the time, Como was doing I don't know what you would call it, an advertisement. What was it? Testimonials?
They do twice a year. They do a share-a-thon where they raise money for like a organization in themselves, and we were the featured
right. So
people.
The girls that had graduated from there were doing, like, testimonials on there and stuff, and that was the first time I had heard about them. And then my dad had talked to a member of the church here, and
That was me.
Yeah, and he had heard about Como from you guys as well.
Danius, yes.
So we called Beth one day, and we were at my dad's work, and she's on the phone. I remember it like it was yesterday. She's on the phone, and my dad's asking her questions. She's on speaker, and I'm sitting there listening. My dad's like, so what's the length of this program? She's like, well, our typical program's 18 months. I looked at my dad, and I said, absolutely not. I'm not doing this.
You wanted the quick fix even after 14 years.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, oh, it's fine. Like, we'll be fine. Just give me 30 days. I'll be fine. So we continued to interview with other places. And every single place that we went, either myself or my father would mention Como, and all these places, even places that were for-profit places that wanted a pretty significant amount of money down, would say, look, if she has a chance to go there, she needs to go there. They have a wonderful success rate.
I was praying you would go there. I wanted the longest possible program.
Yeah.
I have to confess, I did. I was like, she needs to stay. She needs to stay for a long time.
Yeah.
I think there's a benefit in that. Don't you, Beth? I mean, what is the thinking behind having a longer program?
Well, like I said earlier, your brain changes, and for you to be able to be really successful, your brain has to heal and go back to normal. And there is no normal. Like for Chelsea, it was 14 years, so there's no normal. She's going to go back to a 12-year-old. So you have to stay with somebody while the brain heals, and it takes up to between 18 and 24 months for your brain to fully heal from opiate addiction, and then you're left with a 12-year-old. So somewhere in there, you got to raise somebody up from 12. Like a lot of times, it's like junior high at our house because the people are emotionally the age that they became active in their addiction or suffered a significant trauma. So you're left with a lot of emotionally young people. And so the longer you keep them, the better chance you have of them being successful.
I really appreciate that about this program because, you can't expect 14 years to be undone overnight.
No.
It's going to take time.
Right.
And there is no quick fix for this.
No, there isn't.
But the longer you invest, the better your outcome is going to be.
Absolutely.
I love that part about Como. So now here you are. You've signed on the dotted line.
I have.
And in you go.
It was an intense day, too, that I came to the program. There was, like, some commotion that had happened there, and I remember...
I forgot you came that day.
Yeah. Beth walked up to me at the back of the church. She says, I just need you to know you're walking into a funeral. And I was like, oh, God. What am I getting myself into here?
Recovery's messy. I mean,
yeah.
There's nothing perfect about any of this.
Right. So, I fought with Beth for easily 8 months every day. She'd tell me to go left, and I would go right, and she'd tell me to sit.
With a smile on her
and
face.
I'd stand. I mean, I was very much a 12, 13-year-old all the time.
Yes.
Well, tell us about that, Beth. What's it like you must be an incredible person to take on this kind of project.
I think I'm just mean. Dennis might say that.
Yeah, but you have some kind of endurance in you because you see the hope. Help us understand.
So I'm in recovery myself. And so there's not really anything that Chelsea has done that I haven't done and done better than her. So I can think faster than her because she's got a clouded brain when she comes in, and everything is very predictable. Addiction, like heart disease, has just a set of symptoms. Everybody comes in, they're a liar. Everybody comes in, they're a cheater. Everybody comes in really good at manipulating. They all are the same. And they think that they're very unique. They're like, I can lie better than anybody. And that's just not true. They have an adolescent brain, and they act like adolescents. And so, my first big aha is I'm an adult, with a healed brain. So good luck there.
So as a rescuer helper, once you understand what you're dealing with, you just unravel those one
by
one.
Right. And you really, truly, I'm a very determined person. I was born in Defiance, Ohio. So my husband says I was born in Defiance. So I'm just really as determined as they are to not get well. I am more determined that they will get well. And I believe that God can and will make them brand new. And they just have to just sit still long enough for that to happen, know?
And I love how you've been through it, so you truly have the compassion and the depth of understanding that they can overcome and have God in their heart.
Right. That's what I tell them. I said, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
So Chelsea, tell us, okay, give us more. What were these days like in 21 months.
Horrible for Beth. It wasn't great for me either. There's many times that I definitely had words with her. So the day that we had interviewed with her, my dad said, "Are you sure? She kind of reminds me of my Navy drill sergeant." I said, "I don't know, Dad. I must have been having a moment of clarity because I was like, I think that's just what I need, Dad."
It was what you needed.
He's like,
Oh my
okay.
gosh.
So,
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I don't know. I just fought with her about everything. Like she had just said, like, I just felt that she doesn't know what she's talking about. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like, this lady, she's going to help me, but I'm going to do it my way still at the end of the day.
Stubbornness that has to be broken in us to be healed.
Right.
All of us.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Drug addict or not.
Right.
We have to say,
Yeah.
no, I need God. I need others
Right.
to help me. I can't do this myself.
It takes a long time for, Chelsea would defy you with a smile, so she was never an unpleasant human being. And so that kind of didn't work in her favor. I thought,
I love
okay,
you
little sister,
anyway.
And, it's very, very hard for people in addiction to actually allow God to change them. God of their understanding sounds like them, and it's like, if God is going to continue to walk here, you're going to have to let go of certain things. And a lot of it is control and how you think the world is going to go and how your recovery is going to go. It's just not going to go like that. It can over there, but here it isn't going to go like that. Like I said earlier, Chelsea was the first person that we withheld visits for 6 months. Like she was not allowed to visit her family. Well, your dad could come to church. Is that correct?
He came to church and he was allowed to come to the house, but I had to be supervised.
Yeah, she had to be supervised because she would defy you openly with a smile on her face and just as sneaky as a human being could possibly be. And that again is evil that just will not let go.
Yeah.
You just have to keep, no. God is stronger than this. God is stronger than you, and sooner or later he's going to win.
To me, the encouragement is that there is hope, and that if you can get one of your family members or friends to get into a program like Como, then they have a network and a surrounding that gives them the strength, gives them the courage to overcome. There is always hope in God.
There is always hope.
And I still also kudos to you, because there had to have been something in you that said, I do want God. I do want to change. I do want out of this situation. Or
Yeah.
even this would have never worked.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Yeah, I knew that I was exactly where I needed to be at. Now, that did not at all deter me from attempting to do it my way. There came a certain point where I kind of just realized, like, okay, the people that work here and are doing all these things for me, like, they really don't have any ulterior motives. Like, they don't want money from me. They don't want anything but to see me succeed. And that really is when, like, my surrender kind of came in. I mean, but it was easily 8 months in, if not longer.
About a year.
Right. It was a long time.
It was.
What did surrender look like when you said, okay, God, I'm done fighting with Beth. I'm done fighting with my parents, with myself. I'm gonna give this a real Girl Scout try. What was that like?
I mean, for the most part, it was more peaceful for me. But I still had my moments where I would decide to pick my willfulness back up and attempt another go at it, I guess. But I don't know, man. It just really, it was a lot easier by that point. I mean, I knew that I could handle existing in life without drugs by this point.
That's huge. When you cross that line, that's a celebration.
But there was just so much that led up to me even picking up drugs in the first place.
So all the deep, the hurts had to be healed?
Yeah, and I mean, there's just
Drugs
a lot
are
of
the end. They're not the beginning.
right.
Drugs are the very end.
So once we get someone cleaned up,
Right.
and now they're on the path, I want to be clean, I am clean, I can
Right.
see I can live without drugs. Now we have to go to the emotional, to the spiritual, to the heart of
Right.
what hurt you so deep that you ran to this
Right.
drug, and how can we forgive and how can we heal?
Right.
Yeah.
So now you're on this. Did Beth teach you about those things?
She did, very much so. And I mean, there's a point in our program that we had went through that you go through the different negative addictive behaviors that you have. So there's things that you're utilizing, me as a 10, 12, 13-year-old, like manipulation and things like that. I had 38 of these things that I needed to work through and to let go of.
Awesome.
And to learn how to live my life without these things before I was going to be able to have any shot at being successful in the real world on my own.
But honestly, drugs are not everyone should go through their life and take an
Oh,
inventory.
for sure. Absolutely. It's just like once you have that awareness of the 38, character defects or behaviors that you actively participate in, once you have that awareness, it's not like they're gone. You just now have that awareness, and now you have to choose. I have to choose not to be willful. I have to choose to be honest today. I have to choose to do the next right thing again and again. I have to choose to, right now, my mantra to Chelsea is living a life of balance. I have to choose to live my life in balance. I have to choose to do all of these things. And so that's why they say recovery is ongoing, because you daily surrender.
Yes.
I can't, you can, I'm going to let you all day long. I can't do this by myself. God, you can help me, and I'm going to let you do that.
Let God transform us.
Absolutely.
He saves us
For sure.
so that we have a home in heaven and eternity. But He cares so much more. He cares about just transforming our life here on this earth.
Right.
It says in John 10:10, I came that you would have life abundantly.
See?
And Satan wants to steal everything, but he wants to give us that. And He gave you your life back.
He did.
I mean, the beauty of this story, it's really overwhelming. The grace of God. And just the love of God, and so now you're still in there up to 21 months, and you're still we're tweaking the character thing.
Yeah,
is that what we're doing?
For sure. And I'm learning. About 6 months beforehand, I went and got a job at McDonald's. The whole time we work, but it's different not working with the community and not working with the people that you're in the recovery program with. Kind of
Was
going
that
out
tempting?
there.
Was it scary?
It was intimidating. I would say that was the biggest thing, only because I was very aware of all my character defects, and I was very aware of how easily
Still vulnerable.
you could pick them up. Yeah. So,
how many hours a day did you work? Like, was this limited at first, and you built up?
yeah, very much. So I only worked from 7 in the morning until noon. And that's because we have a lot of structured things that we had to do in the program beyond that. And I would have been in a whole world of trouble if you would have just said, all right, here you go. You have 8 hours at work. And
So you work for this. You work for this recovery. You work a job. You work the checklist. You work. I think that's so important.
Well, I mean, like I said, they're emotionally very, very young, and to take an adolescent and throw them into a job and expect them to be successful, or give them their children right away and expect them to be successful is very unrealistic. And I think that's a lot of reason why the success rates are very low, is because you haven't allowed people time to grow up. I tell people all the time, when you grow up and get a job, they get really mad, but they're not emotionally mature enough to do these things. So 5 hours is a really long time to send somebody out there to McDonald's. It's like they come back and they're overwhelmed. I'm like, it's 5 hours. You'll be okay. Yeah, I got to teach them not to, that is how the real world works, and most people have never had a job.
Well, and it helps you to see that sometimes people are so cliche and they just say, oh, well, if that person would just get off drugs and get a job.
Yeah, well they're not going to.
It's not that easy.
No.
no.
That's
Not at all.
ridiculous.
And your patience, this is truly a gifting and a calling. Your patience to help them through, hold their hands until they're strong enough to walk and then run.
Right.
Is such, if someone's out there right now, you're looking for a program, to me, this is really important that you look for a place that's going to have that patience and take the time. So again, you're listening to Your Next Step. I'm Jennifer Jackson, and I'm here with Beth Tabor and Chelsea Swan, and they are part of the church at Como, Compassion Outreach Ministries of Ohio. They support and provide assistance for those victims in human trafficking, drug abuse, and people immersed in poverty. So it's been a joy. It's been an honor, and we're working out this journey. Let's continue the conversation and talk about, what does life look like now, Chelsea? Now that you're running, you're kind of up and going on your own.
So I very strongly believe that recovery, once you have identified the fact that you have an addiction, it is a ongoing process for the rest of your life. And there's days that are easier than other days. It's not ever for me, at least personally, it's not ever I want to go pick up drugs again. But it's like you had said a minute ago, making sure that you have a balanced life, making sure that I'm not at work too much, because that's really easy to do. Just learning. It's a constant learning, and I will be for the rest of my life. I really try hard to surround myself with people that are in recovery, to gain perspective from them, and me maybe help them in some way. I think that it's just really important that we all kind of band together. There's a lot of evil in this world, and
that's for sure.
it comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes than just drugs, and making sure that you're maintaining that positive life.
You need those mentors.
Yeah, very much so.
You had to get rid of toxic people.
Yes.
At what point in this process did you choose, I have to totally eliminate those that are bad for me, toxic, whatever the word you want to use?
So the program that Beth provides, she keeps you protected from those people when you're not strong enough to make the
That's
decision
good.
yourself. And for me, it was a lot longer of a process. like everything else. I mean, it was
But
really
longer was better.
I remember talking to you in the hallway one time about Malachi's dad, and I was just like, I just don't know if I'm ready to let this go. And I mean, I was almost to intermediate.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
it
like,
was
what do you want? You know?
right.
Yeah. Drugs are only one addiction, you know?
Yeah.
You have codependency and you have all of these other things. And it's like, when did you stop craving drugs? Probably 6 months. I mean, after 6 months, you don't really, that's not even an issue anymore.
No.
Now it's just like, well, am I going to go back to this codependent relationship? What am I going to do? You know, because you have as many behaviors you also have addictive behaviors, and those have to be dealt with as well. And if you are in an addictive, toxic relationship, you have to now go do the same thing with that relationship.
Yeah.
So, it was a long time.
I mean, it was.
But they don't have a phone when they're with us. They can't
No.
get a hold of these people. They could if they ran down the road, but you know what I'm saying? We don't allow them to get on the phone. We don't allow them to get on the computer.
You put every parameter in place to help them to be successful.
Absolutely.
And it may, someone looking from the outside in might think, oh, that's so strict, so rigid. But there is an actual purpose behind each and every one of those parameters. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It helps the people that aren't in the program to understand why you do what you do and how important it is.
I mean, if I gave Chelsea a phone and she's on Facebook half the time, you know.
Would have not been good. If I'd have had a phone, an internet, a car, none of those things would have been good at all. I don't think that I would have been able to be successful. There's like no way.
And even to this day, we have to, all of us, in recovery or not, we have to watch ourselves. Jesus says, guard your hearts and minds. So we have to make sure that we aren't putting ourselves in a vulnerable position to be tempted or to be led astray. Because like you said, you face everything every day. Options are out there.
Oh, for sure.
And we have to choose the right
time.
path. So what are the dreams? How does God fit into this phase of your life? What has he taught you? How is your love for him? And what's the future look like?
So, I mean, for me right now, I'm in a pretty good place. I had the stuff I found out about my son about a week or so ago. That's still a lot of stuff that I'm working through and processing. But I'm fortunate because I do have a relationship with him. I go maybe 2 or 3 weeks at the most without seeing him, but I FaceTime with him every day. And I mean, we talk really frequently. I go out and visit my grandmother now, where before I didn't have a relationship with her at all. I go and see my mom almost every time that I go out and see my son, because they're all right there in Indiana, not far from each other.
God's restoring.
Yeah. So, I mean, I found that me being intentional with the relationships that are so important to me is very important to those people as well. I think that for me and my mother, it has made a significant difference in our relationship and kind of healing things. And there was a lot of years of bad stuff that transpired between me and her, and I just think that me taking the time to go down there and to go and see her, or to taking her to dinner or whatever we do in that time, even for that couple of hours, I think that that's just really important to her, and it's been super helpful in
So you're
restoring our
rebuilding
relationship.
trust.
Yeah.
This is a season of rebuilding trust and forgiveness and love.
Yeah.
That's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm definitely working really hard at with Malachi's grandmother. There was a lot of really broken trust in that relationship. It was never a healthy relationship. So I work very hard at implementing proper boundaries between me and her. We did never have that before. It was just it was really a toxic relationship. And she enabled in a lot of ways that I don't think that even nowadays maybe she's still not aware of. But yeah, just having proper boundaries with her, and her allowing me to spend the time that I spend with Malachi, my son.
That's
and
a gift.
It very much is. It very much is. And just being able to have a mother-son relationship with him, that's changed so much. I mean, we never really had that. I mean, he always knew that I was his mom, but I was never his actual mom. I mean, I had the title, but I did not deserve it in any type of way. So just building that back and gaining his trust, it's becoming more and more apparent as time passes since I've been graduated. It's been a little over a year now that I've been graduated from the program.
Gosh.
January 9th was a year.
Right.
I'm coming up on 3 years sober. March 18th.
Congratulations. Yay. We need to go, woohoo, everybody
put
listening,
money on
shout,
it.
yay.
Right.
Yay.
I
This
wouldn't
is
have
so
either.
I would not have
important.
put money on it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So, here we are. We're rebuilding trust. We're establishing boundaries. We're working a job. We're finding new futures and hopes and relationships, and looking back at all the goodness of God. What's your relationship like with God? Do you pray? Do you sing? How do you build that into your...
I pray every single day. Whether it's first thing that when I wake up or right before I go to bed, I have to surrender every day. I mean,
me too.
Sometimes 7, 8, 9, 10
I love
times
it.
in a day.
I love
I now understand when Beth told me all the time that she just heard cats. I do this frequently at work. I have a lot of kids that work for me that are in their either very early 20s or still in their teens. And sometimes it's just like babysitting toddlers. It's rather difficult. It really is. It's hard to do. Because, I mean, I just want them to pour a cup of coffee, but sometimes you're asking too much. They're having a bad day. And
So God's given you a patience for the ones that are coming along.
yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of kids that are either thinking about dabbling or have dabbled in the drug world in the job that I'm in, or have made it into recovery. So, I mean, that's a topic that's very big at my work, specifically at our location. I don't know about the other locations, but recovery is a huge topic of ours. There's probably not a day that passes that we don't talk about it, especially with some of the kids that are still in high school and stuff. Just kind of sharing our stories with them. I have a girl that I work with that has graduated from the program as well. She's my best friend that I never would have thought in a million years that her and I would have been best friends. But
Me either.
never in a million years would have thought that. But we're very close. I cherish my relationship with her.
What's neat is God, he comes in, and when he cleans up our life and heals our heart, he almost always gives us an opportunity. We'll share it with somebody else. Don't keep all this to yourself.
Yeah.
And you're already sharing that hope you have, and being patient with them and loving to them. And you have no idea that could be saving their lives and preventing them from that 14-year path.
Yeah.
And so I love that he's a father that gives us responsibility. He immediately says, okay, now you go. Don't keep all this goodness in to yourself and just self-implode.
I think it's super important in faith and in recovery that you don't keep those things to yourself. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, and I'm sure that I know myself, I watched plenty of commercials on TV like, oh, I was a cocaine addict and now I'm not. Like, Yeah, okay, well, sure. Like, that worked for you, but there's no way that's going to work for me. I think it's just a lot different when you sit down with somebody. You're like, listen, like, I promise you, like, I've literally been in that same exact spot, and I'm telling you, it's not too late. It's never too late.
Right. Beth, Chelsea, what would you say to someone who says, I have my dearest loved one in that situation? What would you say? What could they do? How should they help their people?
Oh, well, first, they should not give up. There's always hope. I mean, there is always hope. Even when you think that this is just it, there is always hope. As a parent, it's a really tough road to walk. I mean, you were with Dennis a lot, and a lot of times I had to say,
cry, a lot of tears.
Yeah, it's just, and I have this saying, don't love your kid to death. Right. Love comes a lot of different ways, and there's not one person in our program that I don't love. I'm just not going to allow it to be a harmful love. And so I would really examine like what you're doing, are you enabling? Love and enabling looks the same to a lot of people. And it's like, well, if I don't do this, then I don't love my child,
Is there any resource out there? Where could they learn to not be an enabler? I bet there's
there's a lot of places. We have a family group right now because of COVID. It's partnered with a local Nar-Anon, which is Narcotics Anonymous. And so all of the families, all the parents of people in our program right now have to attend that. And it's just a group of other families, parents usually, whose kids have either overdosed and died or are like right in the midst of it. How do you live with this, when your child's living on your front porch or, what are you going to do? And you just need support.
Well, and that might be a great first step for someone. Like, I need to learn how to not enable if I'm going to stop this vicious cycle.
Absolutely.
And even if my loved one isn't ready to take any of these steps, I can at least take a step and learn and grow and understand this a little better.
Absolutely. There's so much damage in families. Like Chelsea said, I'm restoring my relationship and I'm rebuilding trust. Once trust is broken on that level, good luck. There's a lot of healing that has to happen. And I've only seen God divinely heal it once.
Yes.
Most of the time he allows us to rely on him and work through it again, over and over and over and over again. But I've not seen God not be faithful there.
He is so faithful.
So, for people, I think, their pastors, their support groups, as many people as you can pull around you. We had to tell Dennis all the time, like, it's okay it's okay that she can't go out and eat at a restaurant. It's okay. We're protecting you, Dennis.
Right.
We're helping you. So
and what would you say, Chels?
I mean, I would say that even in the depths and just the horror that you see in your addiction, you're never too far gone. To the people that are out there struggling with addiction, there was plenty things in my life that I witnessed that I never in a million years would have guessed that I would have either been a part of or would have been present for, and it was not too late for me.
So it's not too late.
It's never too late.
What could they do today to say, I'm gonna change this, and today's my day? Today is somebody's day.
It is.
Say, I am not gonna live for drugs or alcohol or sex, whatever, fill in the blank.
So you can't do it alone. You need other people in recovery. You 100% need other people to help show you the way. There is so many different resources that you can reach out to all over the city. I mean, Columbus is actually a really good city for those kind of things. And just be willing. I would say that that's the biggest thing that I could ever say to anyone would be to be willing to ask and accept help. You won't conquer this on your own. You just won't. I tried many times.
And God, what's his role in it?
Actually trust God. Don't tell yourself you're going to trust God. It's very easy to say, I surrender, I trust you. But it's actually doing so and actually setting your will aside and truly trusting that God has your best interests. He's never led me astray. Still to this day, he's not led me astray. If I'm actually listening to him and not myself, things turn out all right. It might not happen in the amount of time that I want it to happen. I can be a little impatient still. But he's always there. And
Absolutely.
through my entire 14 years of addiction, he was there every day. I just didn't want to see it. And it wasn't his fault. It was my choices, not his.
You know, I think about the cross, and I like to say the cross is where my will and God's will cross.
Oh, that's
You know?
good. That's really good. I like
Jesus,
that.
you know, yeah. I mean, think about the Garden of Gethsemane. He said, "Not my will, but your will be done." And he literally laid down his life for us, that we could have this freedom and this hope. And if he's willing to do that for me, I can be willing to say, "Okay, God, I'm going to crucify my will today, and I'm going to rely on the hope of the cross to get me through it, and your love." And I hopefully this has been helpful. Anyone listening, we're going to try to put some resources together for you, some places you can go, some things you can do. But why don't we just pray? And I know there's somebody that needs that help today, so we want to pray for you. God, I thank you that anyone who's listening right now to my voice, this could be your day of salvation, your day of hope, and your day of freedom. So I pray, God, that you would pour out your power upon them to make those good choices, to see your freedom. And Lord, we just want to thank you for the love that you have shown us through this series of messages, through Chelsea's life. And God, ask you, would you keep us? Would you sustain us? Would you work in and through us? In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And again, you've been listening to Your Next Step. This is Jennifer Jackson, and so honored. It's been a great week of Beth Tabor and Chelsea Swan, the church at Como, and all that God has done and all that he's doing in our city. So thank you for listening.